demographics are impacting the election. The Bipartisan Policy Center released the results of a report looking at demographic changes and their impact on the election. This is 90 Minutes.
Welcome. I'm Scott Slade, host of Atlanta's Morning News on 95.5 WSB-Radio. You're watching the Atlanta Press Club Louder Milk Young Debate Series. This is the general election debate for candidates running for the U.S. Senate special election to fill the seat currently held by Senator Kelly Loeffler. Due to the number of qualified candidates, we've divided them into two groups depending on how they're polling. In order to ensure everyone's safety, the candidates and panelists are participating from their homes or other remote locations. The Atlanta Press Club gives a special thank you to Georgia Public Broadcasting for helping to organize the online debates. Now let's meet the candidates. They are in alphabetical order. Doug Collins, a Republican, currently represents Georgia's 9th Congressional District and has held this seat since 2013. Matt Lieberman, a Democrat, is a graduate of Yale Law School. He's an educator and small business owner. Kelly Loeffler, a Republican, was appointed to the U.S. Senate in January 2020 to replace retiring Senator Johnny Isakson. She's also part owner of Atlanta's WNBA team, the Atlanta Dream. Brian Slowinski, a Libertarian, is a former real estate developer and businessman. Ed Tarver, a Democrat, is a U.S. Army veteran and was the first African-American U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Georgia. Raphael Warnock, a Democrat, is the senior pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. Welcome. Glad you're here. Now let's meet our panel. Greg Bluestein is political reporter with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And Lisa Rayam is host and senior producer of Morning Edition on WABE 90.1. Candidates will have 60 seconds to answer questions and 30 seconds to respond to rebuttals. If candidates feel they should get a rebuttal, they may raise their hand. Due to the number of candidates, it'll be my discretion when it's time to move on. When candidates are answering questions, I'll hold up a piece of paper, letting them know that they have 10 seconds remaining. Now, let's get started. In the first round, each candidate will be asked one question. Lisa, you get the first question to Matt Lieberman.
Mr. Lieberman, a part of your platform rests on protecting voter rights. If elected to serve, what measures would you initiate after the special election to ensure every vote is heard and every vote is counted?
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Yeah, well, hey, we have a John Lewis Voting Rights Act that we ought to pass. It has the name of a true icon of voting and of democracy on it. And look, we need everything from automatic voter just more than getting your driver's license, but interacting with any state agency. Election day should be a holiday. And, voting is our single greatest power as citizens. And government, contrary to what we've seen in Georgia lately, needs to be doing everything it can to empower and encourage that great right we have as citizens. And I will be absolutely committed to fighting that fight for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Greg, please ask a question of Ed Tarver.
Yeah, Mr. Tarver, leaders from your own party want you to get out of the race and make way for a rival. What do you bring to the table that the other candidates don't as you're competing for this special election?
Well, Greg, good to see you. Thank you for that question. I didn't get out of the race because it just didn't make sense to do that. When you look at my demonstrated record of public service, I thought that I was extremely qualified to represent Georgia in the U.S. Senate. In addition to being an Army veteran, I'm an attorney, a graduate of the University of Georgia Law School. I served parts of 3 terms in the Georgia State Senate, where I sponsored in excess of 123 pieces of legislation. President Obama came to the Senate and nominated me to be the U.S. Attorney for Southern Georgia. And I think that I show that I have preparation and certainly have the skills and the background and the knowledge to represent Georgia effectively in the U.S. Senate. So, for those reasons, it didn't make much sense for me to withdraw from the race, especially at the time that those issues were raised. There had not been a single vote cast in this election.
Thank you. Lisa, please ask a question to Doug Collins.
Mr. Collins, hours after Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death, you tweeted RIP to the quote 30 million innocent babies who died due to her pro-abortion laws. While you have a right to voice your opinion, some labeled the comment extremely insensitive, and others said it didn't represent sound leadership for Georgia. Do you regret the timing of that tweet? Do you regret that tweet?
Well, thank you, Lisa. No, I don't regret that tweet, because what I was looking forward to is not a reflection on Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it's a reflection on the anti-life commitment that we've seen over the last 40 years in this country, and especially coming out of the Supreme Court. That was meant for a discussion about life, and what I thought President Trump was looking for a pro-life candidate. I'm so happy that he has named Amy Coney Barrett to be on the Supreme Court, because she has a life perspective. That was a perspective of what that position of pro-abortion rights has cost us in this country. It's cost us a generation over many times. And so my point is let's look at this for see. The president said he was going to put a very good emphasis on life as he appoints people to the United States Supreme Court. And that simply was looking forward, because this is a ultimate discussion, and I've always been pro-life. So I'll never back up on defending life.
Thank you.
Greg, we go back to you for a question to Raphael Warnock.
Yeah, Reverend Warnock, I want to start you off with a question about the economy. Joe Biden and other national Democrats support a tax hike on households earning more than $400,000 annually. Do you back that measure? And what other tax policy changes are needed to rev up the nation's economy amid the pandemic?
Thank you so very much, and it's wonderful to be here with you. Listen, we are in the middle of a once-in-a-century global pandemic, a public health emergency that's created an economic crisis, the likes of which we have not seen since the Great Depression. What I support is that we ought to give middle-class families and poor families a break right about now. And so I want us to start thinking about the things that we can do to give people a living wage, to raise their wages. I think that the biggest tax right now on ordinary families is the fact that we've got 500,000 Georgians right now in the Medicaid gap. These are mostly the working poor. And the fact that they can't get health care in this state is a burden on their families. It's a drag on the economy. And I think Georgia deserves a United States senator who will stand up for ordinary people and make sure that they have the support that they need at a time like this. So I'm concerned about that tax, and I want to relieve the people of Georgia and give them a chance at a better life.
Reverend, specifically, do you support a tax increase on households making more than $400,000 a year?
I would support any kind of relief for ordinary families. I think those who are making above $400,000 a year could perhaps afford some more to pay taxes, to pay some more taxes. I'm certainly opposed to the $2 trillion tax cut that the Republicans gave to the richest of the rich in 2017. If we repeal that tax cut,
that's our time for this exchange. Thank you, Mr. Warnock. Lisa, your question for Kelly Loeffler.
Senator Loeffler, you continue to support a president who continues to downplay the severity of the coronavirus. Here in Georgia, more than 7,600 lives have been lost. How do you support or justify your support? And would you in any way be a voice in Washington for those who have suffered from the devastating loss of a loved one?
Well, thank you for the question, Lisa. Thank you to Atlanta Press Club for convening this important debate. And I just want to say to all Georgians, it's the honor of a lifetime to serve as your U.S. Senator in the Senate. I'm a conservative businesswoman, a political outsider who's fighting for the American dream. And that's why I'm so proud to stand with President Trump in fighting this virus and getting the economy stood back up on its feet, to restore it to the greatest heights it had ever seen before this pandemic. But let me be very clear, my heart goes out to all Americans, all Georgians whose lives have been lost, cut short due to this tragic virus. I'm working to hold China accountable for this virus. I'm working to help get Georgians back on their feet. But what I've seen firsthand in Washington is the fact that the radical left and career politicians have kicked the cans and caused the problems that we have. Look what Democrats just did. They blocked funding for schools to reopen, for small businesses to get PPP funds, and for vaccinations to be delivered. So I am always going to be the voice for every single Georgian.
Okay, thank you very much. Greg, you get the final question this round for Brian Slowinski.
Yeah, Mr. Slowinski, you call yourself a former JFK Democrat and a former Tea Party Republican. How did you end up a third-party candidate, and why are you different from the other contenders sharing the spotlight?
Well, thank you, Greg. That's a great example. First off, I started in politics a long time ago. I started in 1980. I was involved in the Democratic Party from 1980 until 1994. I grew up during the era of I was a Polish Catholic, JFK Democrat. I grew up in a union household and went through the Democratic Party and saw that they will not promote anybody that's not a yes man. They won't agree with that. And I actually led a group of a third of the state convention in Minnesota in 1994 to leave the convention because we were discriminated against because we were pro-life Democrats. As far as the Tea Party goes, well, where did I go to? Well, in 1994, I voted a straight Republican ticket after that fiasco. I worked within the Democratic Party. I'm actually more of a Republican than the Republicans who are on this panel right now, okay? Because I've served 14 times in the grassroots level. I've served as a county chairman over in Columbia County. I've served on the district level. I've served on the state level. So, and I was also chairman of the Tea Party over in Columbia County.
Thank you. That concludes the first portion of the debate. The candidates will now ask a question to an opponent of their choice. And here's how that's going to work. Candidates will have 15 seconds to ask the question, 60 seconds to respond, and then 30 seconds for a rebuttal. Ed Tarver, you get the first question for one of your opponents.
My question would go to Senator Loeffler. Since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, several rural Georgia hospitals have closed, with others have indicated that their closure is imminent. For 3 years, Republicans have promised a health care plan to replace the Affordable Care Act that currently covers pre-existing conditions. Where is that plan? And explain why Republicans are currently before the United States Supreme Court seeking to repeal the Affordable Care Act.
Thank you so much for your question, Ed. This is a vitally important question. First of all, too many of our rural hospitals have closed. 7 have closed in the last decade. 2 have announced closures. That's why one of my first acts in the Senate was to provide funding. One of my first bills that I had passed as a freshman senator was rural health funding. Another bill that I had passed to help rural communities was telemedicine. And I will always fight for rural families because I grew up on a farm. The nearest town had 600 people in it. I understand when a tractor tire explodes, how important it is to have that rural health, or a heart attack. So I'll always fight for our rural families. But let's be very clear. Obamacare has failed. It's failed Georgians. Over 100,000 Georgians left the exchange over the last couple of years. Premiums have skyrocketed 103% in 3 years. Deductibles have doubled. That's why I am supporting ways to protect pre-existing conditions, but not put the tax on the backs of hardworking Georgia taxpayers. And that's what Governor Kemp's done with these Medicare and Obamacare waivers to lower costs and provide additional support for hardworking families. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ed Tarver, 30 seconds for a response from you, if you wish it.
Well, I appreciate the senator's response. I don't believe she's answered the question about where I asked her to describe the plan that has been promised by the Republicans for the last 3 years. I look forward to hearing more about what they propose to replace the Affordable Care Act, which currently covers Republicans, Democrats, and independents. Thank you.
I'd be happy to follow up if you'd like.
Well, sure. Let's spend 20 seconds on that. Then Mr. Tarver can rebut that. Go ahead.
Fantastic. Look, the best way to give Americans good quality health care is to provide jobs. We need to continue to create a jobs-led recovery. I know that 160 million Americans have great health insurance through their employer. And so I'm working side by side with President Trump to make sure that we provide those jobs that provide great benefits for hardworking families.
And Mr. Tarver, a 20-second response from you, if you'd like it.
Well, I think we all are supportive of finding jobs, but we have seen during this COVID-19 pandemic that there are such situations that prevent people from gaining access to health care. And one of those is the Affordable Health Care Plan, Affordable Care Act, that has provided health care to many who lost their jobs and who lost their health care. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kelly Loeffler, it's your turn to ask a question of one of your opponents.
Thank you. My question is for Raphael Warnock. Mr. Warnock, you've called police officers, thugs, bullies, and gangsters. You've characterized them as a threat to our children. Will you apologize to our hardworking men and women in law enforcement and to Georgia families for these dangerous and hurtful attacks?
Warnock.
I have deep respect for police officers and law enforcement, and I believe that the senator knows this. Certainly the members of the law enforcement know this. This is why they've come to my church on a couple of occasions as they remembered fallen officers who died in the line of duty. So I support law enforcement. They've come to my church many times. We work together. I think it's possible to appreciate the work that law enforcement members do and at the same time hold them accountable. We see abuse in all kinds of professions. We see it among those who hold office, who abuse their authority, focused on their own financial wealth rather than the people they're supposed to be representing. And so I'll continue to fight for safe communities, and I'll continue to fight to make sure that we all have equal protection under the law. That's always been my goal, equal protection under the law.
And Kelly Loeffler, a 30-second response.
Well, I find it tragic that you will not apologize for these comments attacking our brave men and women in blue. They are on the thin blue line, keeping our families safe. And I think it's vitally important that everyone understand the sacrifices that they make every day they put on the badge and wear the uniform. That's why I've introduced legislation that defunds cities, that defund the police. These brave men and women know that I will always have their back, and I will stand up to anyone who tries to diminish their role or attack their profession.
Thank you. Raphael Warnock, it is your turn to ask a question of an opponent.
No, I would like to rebut the senator's comment.
Okay, I'll tell you what, you can take 20 seconds to do that.
Listen, I do not think that we should defund the police, and I've never said that. I do think that it's lamentable that the senator is using her power to politicize an issue where people are literally dying on the streets. What we could use a senator doing is putting forward the kind of reform that we need in our criminal justice system. We need to get rid of qualified immunity. We need independent review process when civilians die at the hand of police. We can do that and at the same time appreciate the great work that our police officers do.
I'd like to respond.
We still have the micro. Well, we're going to have to move on. We've done rebuttal and counter for 2 times on that question, so perhaps we can get to some of that later. Meanwhile, Raphael Warnock, it is your turn to ask a question of an opponent.
Sure. Congressman Collins, this past week, Senator Loeffler was endorsed by Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is an outspoken supporter of the QAnon movement, a movement that pushes conspiracy theories and traffics in hate. My question for you, Congressman Collins, is will you speak out clearly and condemn QAnon and their hate-filled rhetoric?
60 seconds.
Raphael Warnock says, thanks for the question, because I don't agree with QAnon, and I have not agreed with them and don't support them. But it's interesting to me, I never heard you utter the words Antifa. I've never heard the Democrats, especially when we got on the floor and they wanted to put a bill on the floor for political purposes just a little over a week ago. They wanted to do about QAnon, the conspiracy theories on the internet, which is fine. But they often just overlook Antifa, which is setting our cities on fire. Maybe the question should come back to you, Reverend Warnock. Are you going to condemn Antifa? Are you going to condemn the violence that's going through our streets right now? Or are you going to sit compliant and be complacent in what they're doing to our cities?
And 30 seconds back to you, Mr. Warnock.
Sure. First of all, I want to thank the congressman for condemning QAnon, which is more than I can say for the senator who's embraced the support of Marjorie Taylor Greene. I condemn violence no matter where it shows up or who the source is. I'm the pastor of Martin Luther King Jr.'s church. And what I am moved by is that in the midst of the challenges we've seen this summer, tragic flashpoints, George Floyd and others, we've seen a multiracial, multi-generational coalition of conscience pouring out into American streets, saying that we're better than this. And I'm proud to stand with those who are non-violently standing up to violence.
That's our time.
Wherever it shows up.
That's our time. Thank you.
I'd like to respond.
Kelly Loeffler, certainly, yes. 30 seconds to rebut, please.
Yes, thank you. Look, I denounce hate groups of all types. On the left and the right, I don't know anything about QAnon. But what I know is that we need to make sure that we have fighters in Washington for American ideals who will stand up to the radical left, the socialist agenda that they're trying to push on this country that would put government at the center of our lives, that would take away our rights. Look what they're trying to do. They're trying to pack the court, stack the Senate with additional Democrat senators, put the Green New Deal in place that would bankrupt our country and our energy independence. So I'm always going to stand up with someone who is fighting for American ideals.
All right, thank you. Matt Lieberman,
I'd like to
please
respond.
ask your question of an opponent. I think we're going to move on, Reverend. Thank you.
Sure.
Sure, I could ask this of Kelly or Doug, but I will ask Kelly. Kelly, can you name something that President Trump has said or done that you disagree with?
No, because I am proud to be the only U.S. senator with a 100% voting record with President Trump. I've been named the most conservative senator in the U.S. Senate, and I've been endorsed by National Right to Life. That's because I will always stand up for conservative values. That's what this president is doing. He's lifted the economy to new heights. He created an economy that created record employment for African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, that gave us energy independence, that supported our farmers, our hardworking men and women in the military, and supported peace in the Middle East. And, you know, what this president has done is unprecedented during a pandemic when he's trying to fight the swamp, the radical left, China, and the fake news, and now big tech, who my opponents have sided with. So I think it's really important we understand that we are blessed in this country to have a president who's fighting every single day for every American's opportunity to live the American dream.
Hey, Scott.
And an opportunity for a 30-second response.
Scott.
I'm sorry, Mr. Collins, hang on just a minute. Mr. Lieberman, a 30-second response due there.
Sure. Well, you know, look, Donald Trump is an interesting guy. I can see how people might vote for him, but it's hard for me to see how people can find no fault with anything he's said or done. And it just speaks to the extent to which the establishment Republican and establishment Democratic candidates in this race are like party drones. And what's the good for us in Georgia to have a senator who's just going to be about agreeing with Donald Trump or Mitch McConnell or Chuck Schumer or anyone like that? We need someone who will fight for us. And that's why I'm in this race.
I'd like to respond.
Scott,
Mr. Collins, do you feel like you were attacked in Senator Loeffler's answer?
I do. I think, is my opponent's side with big tech. Well, number one, we are the ones who actually started the investigation into big tech, talking about antitrust and breaking it up, and also Section 230. But Senator Loeffler can't get away with her own facts. 100% voting record with Trump. She voted for the NDAA, which President Trump said he would veto. She just voted against the continuing resolution, which the president signed. Doesn't look like 100% to me, Senator Loeffler. Maybe your math's wrong, or maybe your cue card's wrong.
I'd like to respond. Yeah. President Trump supported the Senate version of the NDAA, and he did not put out a remark on the CR. And let me tell you what Congressman Collins does. He rubber stamps every budget that comes in front of him. He's a tax and spend career politician. That's why, just like the president, I'm a political outsider, a conservative businesswoman who isn't just going to rubber stamp everything that comes to the floor.
And back to Mr. Collins on that.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is amazing for a 6-month senator who has been in Washington for a long time, paying over $14 million in lobbyists to make sure that the bills come out her way. You see, there's a lot about legislating here. There's a lot about talk. But frankly, when you actually sign a CR, this president supported the CR. Let's get off the talking point and be honest.
Okay, we'll have to move on. Brian Slowinski, it is your turn to ask a question of a candidate. Well,
it was my question originally, if I could just real quick.
Sure.
The way they respond to each other is by saying, no, I'm 100% in line with Trump, not you, which just goes to the point that we need someone who's 100% for us. And I'd ask people to look at my contract with Georgia on the website and Facebook page. I feel it represents our priorities and values.
Okay, Brian Slowinski, to you, it's your turn to ask a question of an
I'd like to
opponent.
chime in on this point, if you don't mind. I'd like to chime in on this
You
point.
have the floor.
Okay, well, in response to Mr. Lieberman about how this is the Republicans and Democrats, that's the whole point of me being here, because I'm actually someone who's not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm someone who's been endorsed by a third party, 2 third parties actually. I've been endorsed by the Libertarian Party as well as the Constitution Party, as well as I've been recently endorsed by Georgia Right to Life. So, you know, I'm the one that will keep them honest. If you want someone to send somebody up to Washington, D.C., we'll keep them honest. Vote for Brian Slowinski.
So, okay, move on to your question for one of your opponents, Mr. Slade.
My question will be to Senator Kelly Loeffler. You always talk about beat China and stuff like that. The problem is you don't talk. The real problem is that the Communist Chinese Party. I have 4 children from China. Every time you do a blanket statement like that, you're putting a target on their back. Are you going to apologize to my children for spouting off that hate towards China, or are you just going to be a typical politician and just answer here or there?
Well, thank you for your question, Mr. Slowinski, and I have deep respect for your adoption of children. I believe strongly in adoption and foster care, so thank you for that. And look, we have to hold the Chinese Communist Party accountable. My title, Beat China Act, is actually an acronym that stands for bringing back innovation back here in North America. But let me be very clear. I will not be an apologist or a shill for China. China brought this disease to our country. We have to hold China accountable. They made the WHO complicit in its spread around the world. They've stolen our intellectual property. They've spied on us. They've denied it. And just like President Trump has said, we will hold them accountable. But he's also worked hard to enact the Phase 1 trade deal because we have to find ways to address China's growth in this world. But what we have to do is put America first. And I say if it's going to be America first, it has to be American made. That's my focus.
And a response from Brian Slowinski, 30 seconds.
Typical politician answer. She didn't answer the question. She didn't apologize to my children. I have 8 adopted children from all over the world. And to espouse this kind of hate over one race is wrong. Call out the actors. The actors are the Communist Chinese Party. That's who you need to be calling out. You don't need to say it's China's fault. No, it's not. It's the Communist Chinese Party in China. Answer the question.
Ms. Loeffler, you want to respond? I'll give you 15 or 20 seconds there if you'd like to go there.
Sure. Thank you so much. Yeah, we have to hold China accountable for their actions toward our country. And I will always stand up for America in this conversation and without disrespecting anyone, because we have to hold everyone with regard, and there's no place for discrimination or hate in this country. And I will always speak out against that, but I will always stand up for America.
Then apologize.
And Doug Collins, you get the final question in this round for an opponent.
Thanks, Scott. Kelly, you talk tough about China, but you refuse to delist corporations that are owned by the Chinese Communist Party from the New York Stock Exchange, which you own. So I have a question for you. Do you still have the $56,000 portrait of Chairman Mao hanging in your foyer as it was seen on social media? It seems a little hypocritical, or maybe it's just enlightening after that last exchange.
You know, I'm glad you asked that question, Congressman. You know, I think Georgians are tired of lies. Hardworking Georgians want the truth. They're tired of a campaign that has been filled with lies directed at me. Let me tell you the truth. Governor Kemp appointed me because I am the true conservative in this race. Now, look, you've said I have no place here, that I'm only here because of my husband, that I should do something I'm qualified for. But you know what? You've attacked my hair, my makeup, how I talk, my clothes, where I'm from. You've lied about me. You've lied about my family. And let me tell you, here's the truth. I'm here because I've earned everything I got. I am the true conservative. I don't have to have a record that I have to lie about and cover up. I encourage everyone to look at DougCollinsForSenate.com and understand he is one of the most liberal Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives. That's why Governor Kemp appointed me to the Senate, and I'm fighting for every single Georgian's chance to live the American dream that I was so blessed to live.
And Doug Collins, a 30-second rebuttal there for you.
Wow, I just really don't know where to start with the most amazing lies that just started. I've never mentioned anything personally about her fixtures, hair, or anything else, but it's amazing what she talked about me. And if she spent over $35 million doing it. You know what's really interesting here, Kelly? This is really the true issue. There are lies going on. It's the lies about what you used to do when you worked with Planned Parenthood, when you worked with Michael Bloomberg, when you won't delist companies. You see, there's a choice here. You don't have to wait for legislation. You could actually go against the Chinese Communist Party right now, but you won't.
I'd like to respond.
Maybe let me finish, and then I'll let you respond. But you could delist now, but you don't do it. So when it's a choice between policies and pocketbook, everybody in the state of Georgia knows where you stand.
Okay, all response, Ms. Loeffler.
Well, thank you. You know, that's the Congressman refers to legislation, just so Georgians hear this, that we passed in the Senate to delist companies that he's holding up in the House. So here he's partnering with Nancy Pelosi to holding China accountable. That's why I continue to stand up and fight for our right in America to put America first, have America made, and I will always do that.
Scott.
And the final word to you, Doug Collins, in this rebuttal cycle. Go ahead.
This final word. This again shows the senator who doesn't understand the legislative process. Number one, she had unanimous consent on a bill that does not delist those companies. If she wanted to actually join Senator Lindsey Graham and myself on a bill that actually does do that, we'll be happy to have her. And by the way, Senator Loeffler, Speaker Pelosi runs the House, and she runs it very badly. I've been fighting against her. So we understand what happens in the House. Maybe we don't act a bill that works.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes our second round. For those just joining us, it sounds like we're moving some furniture around there. That's what happens when you go virtual. For those just joining us, this is the debate between candidates for U.S. Senate special election. Due to the number of qualified candidates, they've been divided into two debates. We'll now go back to the panel to ask questions until we run out of time, and I'll determine when rebuttal is appropriate. The candidates may raise their hand if they feel they should get a rebuttal. Candidates will have 60 seconds to answer each of these questions. Bluestein, you get the first question of this round.
Yeah, and let's do this one as an all-candidate question. So maybe 30 seconds apiece. Scott, is that cool?
Sure, we can do that.
Yeah, it gets forgotten sometimes, but each of you are running to fill out the remaining 2 years of Senator Johnny Isakson's term. And Senator Isakson carved a reputation not only as a conservative, but also a consensus builder. So what I'd like to ask each of you is, what have you done in the past to uphold that sort of legacy?
Okay, Matt Lieberman, we'll start with you, 30 seconds.
Well, Greg, you make a great point. And look, let me say something. It's been reported on. It may make some Democratic activists, set their hair on fire. But I'm proud that I contributed twice to Senator Isaacson's campaigns. And I would bet that Senator Isaacson over the last few years has been frustrated with how hard, right, and partisan the Republican Party's come. Look, my whole campaign, everything I've been saying is about the need to get away from this hyper-partisan culture and have the courage to come together. It takes courage because the parties don't want you to do it, but we need to do it.
That's our time. The Isaacson legacy. Ed Tarver, your turn, 30 seconds.
I think that's an excellent question. And I would just point to my service in the Georgia State Senate, where I had a reputation of working in a bipartisan fashion on behalf of Georgians. I think all Georgians agree that Congress is broken, Washington is broken, and that one of the reasons is the polarization and the partisanship that influences every decision that's attempted. Thank you.
And Raphael Warnock, the question to you, sir.
Years ago, you might remember that the folks on the right and the left decided for the State of the Union we should sit together across the aisle. I was actually Johnny Isaacson's guest for State of the Union. We're good. We're friendly, although we disagree almost all of the time. As a pastor, I know how to bring people together, and I've especially done it in the area of criminal justice reform, which is the one area in our politics where the right and the left agrees that the current status quo is unsustainable. And so I'm happy to work with anybody to get us closer to what we call the beloved community.
That's our time. Thank you. Doug Collins, the same question to you regarding Johnny Isaacson's legacy.
Well, it's pretty easy for me because I'm the only one on this panel who's actually worked and actually got things accomplished in a bipartisan way. It's called the First Step Act. That's criminal justice reform that Reverend Warnock spoke of. It actually reformed our criminal justice system for the first time in over 30 years on the federal level. We worked across party lines, and the president has actually thought enough about it, and he actually come on board and helped us get that done, and he's actually running for a re-election on it. We have to put people first, and we have to look for the best ideas, and those are the kind of things that I've always brought to the table.
And Brian Slowinski, the question to you regarding Isaacson's legacy.
Well, as a consensus builder, I've actually sponsored 14 different online debates that everybody's been invited to. We've always had a Republican, we've had a Democrat, we've had independents, Green Party, Libertarians. I also want to talk about candidate suppression as well, though, because what happens right now is you only have 2 Republicans on it, but there's actually 5 Republicans running. And they're suppressed because they're left out of polls. They're not covered by our media, not by the AGC, JC, or anything like that. And it hurts our republic when not everybody's being covered. The media should cover everybody, and
thank you.
The party should invite everybody.
Kelly Loeffler, the same question to you. Isaacson's legacy, 30 seconds, please.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so humbled to serve in Johnny Isaacson's seat. I got to watch him for a decade and learn from him. And look, I'll remind the congressman that another important piece of bipartisan legislation that we passed this year that I worked very hard on was the CARES Act, delivering relief, $2 trillion to this country, $47 billion to Georgia. And then I worked hard to deliver that around the state. I'm also proud of my work on the Veterans Affairs Committee, where we get a lot of great bipartisan work done because we have a suicide challenge in dealing with 20 suicide per day in the veteran community. So thank you.
The time is up. Thank you very much. Lisa Rayam, the next question to you for one of our candidates, and they have 60 seconds to respond.
Senator Loeffler, Marxism is the belief that struggle between social classes is a major force in society. You have said that the Black Lives Matters movement is a Marxist movement. Are you really saying that Black lives don't matter at all?
Well, Lisa, thank you for this important question. Of course not. The life of every African American is important, and there is absolutely no place in this country for racism, and we have to root it out where it exists. But the BLM political organization, BLM Inc., was founded by trained Marxists. Now, look, they have a socialist agenda, but their number one goal is to defund the police, and there's a 5-year plan to abolish the police. Now, let's be clear. 81% of African Americans say that they want the same level of policing or more. This is not an initiative that helps Black lives. BLM Inc. has promoted violence and anti-Semitism around our country. They've said that they support the erosion of the nuclear family. That's moms and dads. That's why I had to speak out. I'm standing up to help communities, to support economic recovery, jobs. Georgia is the number 3 state in the country for Black-owned businesses. We need to make it number 1. That's economic opportunity, education, and healthcare. That's what I'm working on.
We have about 3 minutes left in this round. Greg Bluestein, the next question for you, please.
Yeah, Congressman Collins, recently Republican Senator John Cornyn of Texas, who, as you know, is a close ally of the president, said he regretted not pushing him harder to combat the coronavirus more aggressively. You two have had access to the White House. What do you wish you had told the president about the pandemic?
Well, I think exactly what we've seen happen. I think when you were given an opportunity like this, when we had the pandemic come, the president did take action early on. We talked about getting this. He actually closed off China, and the Democrats attacked him for being xenophobic. Actually, was going around in February and March. You had Nancy Pelosi going to San Francisco saying, hey, come visit us. They didn't want to talk about those things. The president's put into play, with the vice president leading a task force, to begin to look at where we are and what we could do to combat it. We started looking at our PPE supplies. We started looking at how we could help state and local. What we wanted to do is what we actually encouraged him to do was when we came to the economic package, our PPP program, where we actually saved business, where we understood that it was not only a virus that is an infection, but also an economic issue as well, because our country was having to shut down to get back on its feet. And I think what we can do better and move more of is to begin to continue to help find those businesses, just like he's talked about, helping those small businesses, helping those get back and going. Georgia is living proof that you can actually get the economy going and get our state going at the same time as actually making sure that the virus is kept in check.
Okay, thank you. And we actually have another 9 minutes or so in this round. Let's see. Lisa, are you next? Or is
Yes, I am next. Thank you. Reverend Warnock, you've heard the motto, one leads by example. Considering President Trump's views on the coronavirus, if you were his guest at the White House today, would you social distance and would you wear a mask?
Oh, absolutely. We should all be engaged in social distancing, and we should all be wearing a mask. The science is very clear on this, and I wish that the folks who are serving in Washington would pay attention to the science instead of politicizing something as basic and obvious as wearing a mask. I'm deeply concerned and disappointed that Senator Loeffler was at the White House without wearing a mask, and that she is enabling this president. We're 9 months into this pandemic, and government is not doing what it can do. We still haven't seen a national coordinated response to this epidemic. What we're seeing is the typical bickering that we see among Washington politicians, Collins and Loeffler attacking each other using these code words. Meanwhile, I'm talking to ordinary citizens, and they're trying to figure out how they're going to make their way through the dense fog of an epidemic, take care of their families, and get their children back in schools in ways that are actually safe. We need leaders who stand up for ordinary people.
Scott.
I'd like to respond.
Just a second.
Scott.
Yes, yes. Ms. Loeffler, you were called out there. You get the first rebuttal at 30 seconds.
Thank you, Scott. Look, we have followed the guidelines that the president has put out, that the health authorities have put out. And of course, we have to follow the science. But Democrats have politicized this to the point where they make a vaccine politicized. If they're so big on following the science, they should welcome a vaccine under this president. But let's be very clear what you just heard. The Democrats want to keep our economy locked down. They want kids out of school. They want people out of the work. They want businesses closing. We have to fight for everyday Americans' needs and making sure that they can keep their jobs, their schools,
and that's our time.
Because that is what's going to solve our problem.
Scott.
And that's our time. 20 seconds to Doug Collins here. Go ahead.
Thanks. What really concerned me, what Reverend Warnock said there, we do need to open our country, but this idea of going back and forth and using code words. Reverend Warnock, I'm not sure what you're meaning there, but if that means putting people first, if that means opening back up a state and actually putting the science and making sure that our folks can have that spiritual current and that welfare with each other, where we had in Gainesville just about a month ago, 3 senior adults commit suicide because of the isolation. I'm not sure what you're talking about code words, but my code word is Georgia and the American people. That's what we have to put first.
And 30 seconds back to Raphael Warnock, since you were called out this.
These are not theoretical issues for me. I'm a pastor, and my church has not worshiped on Sunday morning in place since March. And we'd love to reopen. Not long ago, I performed a funeral for a member of my church, a coach who died, left 16-year-old twin daughters and a wife. I think we should reopen, but we should reopen safely, and we certainly should not be politicizing the science, which is why we're concerned. And you ask people about the vaccine, we ought to pay attention to the science, but the politicians have politicized everything, wearing a mask, social distancing. Loeffler says
and
that—
that's our time. Thank you. Greg Bluestein, next question from you.
Yeah, Senator Loeffler, you've spent $20 million of your own money on this thing so far. Your husband's chipped in another $5.5 million at least. It's part of a tidal wave of cash spent so far in Georgia's 2 U.S. Senate races. Your opponents accuse you of buying the race. What, if anything, needs to be done to limit the need for this type of spending to win elections in Georgia, to run our elections in Georgia?
Thank you, Greg. Well, look, you cannot put a price on the American dream. I went to Washington to fight for the American dream that I lived. I grew up on a farm. I grew up working in the fields, and then I waitressed my way through high school and college. I was the first in my family to graduate from college, and through hard work, I became successful in business. And look, this is how I've decided to give back, is through public service. I donate my pay to charities around Georgia, much like the president does. And like the president, I am a self-funder. That way, I'm not bought and paid for by anyone. We have others here that are bought and paid for. That's not me. I am here fighting for the American dream. But I notice my Democrat opponents don't complain about taking tens and tens of millions of dollars from Chuck Schumer when he's out raising money for them. So, Greg, you pose a good question, but I think, we have to have free and fair elections and make sure that, we have people in Washington representing hardworking Georgians.
Lisa Rayam, the next question from you.
For Scott.
Yeah, we'll have to move on there. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Back to you, Lisa.
Mr. Collins, let me ask you, President Trump is adamant that schools should reopen in the midst of this pandemic. What is your standpoint on that, knowing that the numbers are rising in various states around the country and here in Georgia?
Well, the numbers are staying steady in Georgia, Lisa, and we've seen that as schools have opened. We've seen that in places, and like I've been down in Camden County, where when they first started schools back open, they practiced social distance, they did the protections, and the number of cases have actually dropped while the kids have gone to school. Let's go back to what I said before. Let's look at science. Let's look at what's actually happening as we go along in our schools. And I think that's what has to happen. Our kids actually want to go back, and we can do it safely, and we need to provide the resources for that. But I do have a comment, though, from the previous time. There's only one person that's really in this thing talking about bought and paid for. There's a reason Kelly Loeffler spending $25 plus or $30 million in this, because she don't want people to know about her past. That's the reason she's spending the money. And then, by the way, Senator Loeffler, you're truly self-funding. Are you going to stop fundraising this week? Maybe, maybe not. See, it's not about that. It's about the truth, Senator Loeffler.
I'd like to respond. Yeah, thank you very much. Look, Doug Collins doesn't know me. I don't need advice from a failed career politician who has built a campaign on lies about someone who is a true conservative. I encourage all Georgians to look at Doug Collins' record. He's partnered with Stacey Abrams. He voted with her 300 times in the State House. He's rated one of the most liberal Republicans in the House of Representatives. In fact, he voted with Stacey Abrams to water down the Second Amendment, to remove some of our Second Amendment rights. I think it's vitally important that Georgians understand Governor Kemp appointed me because I'm a true conservative. I've earned everything I got.
Scott.
Okay, 20 seconds back to Doug Collins, and that'll close this round of questioning on that side.
You know, I'm sure Senator Loeffler is getting used to the Senate, but you know, when you do unanimous consents in the Senate, Senator Loeffler, you're voting with Chuck Schumer. You can throw out these things all the time you want to. You voted with Dick Durbin and others. You can throw out Stacey Abrams, but let's remind everybody, she worked for the Atlanta Dream basketball team. You honored her during the governor's election as a woman of distinction. Let's just get to the truth. You're trying to deceive people because you know my record and people can actually trust it because actually I have one. Tested, proven, trusted.
Okay,
let me respond to that.
Just a few seconds, Senator.
Yeah, look, you know, unanimous consent, what we passed on the Senate floor was holding China accountable. That's what you're holding up in the House. And I am proud to be an owner of a sports team that provides opportunities for women. As a father of a daughter, I think you would understand how important it is to give girls the same opportunity that boys have.
Okay, thank you very much. A final question here from Greg Bluestein for our candidates and their closing statements. Greg.
Yeah, this is for Matt Lieberman. Mr. Lieberman, as you mentioned, some Democrats have questioned your loyalty. They've pointed out your past contributions to Republicans. You're hosting a fundraiser for a Republican senator in South Carolina. What can you tell us about your experience building coalitions, developing policies, navigating political systems that makes you equipped for this job?
Sure. Well, you know, and again, when I think I probably contributed to around 20 Democrats and I think 3 Republicans. Each of those Republicans were at the time moderate Republicans. I am not a professional politician. I have not been angling or positioning for this. I grew up in politics. I know what the opportunities are. I know what the pitfalls are, and I would be able to hit the ground running in Washington, focused on doing the work for the people of Georgia. But I'm a lawyer by training, but I'm an educator the first half of my career and a small business person the second half, and I've been a very, very hands-on dad for the last 20 years of 2 beautiful daughters. That's what my experience is. So if you're looking for experience, legislative wheeling, dealing, schmoozing the political schmooze, I haven't been doing that. If you're looking for someone who's been living a life like most of us and is ready to fight for our priorities and values, I'm here.
Thank you. And that's all the time we have for questions for this hour. Each candidate will have 60 seconds for a closing statement. And Raphael, Warnock, you get the first closing statement.
Thank you so very much. It's wonderful to be here. Listen, I am a kid who grew up, born and raised right here in Georgia, one of 12 children in my family. I'm number 11 and the first college graduate in my family. I got there through hard work, a sense of personal responsibility, grit, and determination. But somebody gave me a Pell Grant, some low-interest student loans. I am an example of the American dream and what happens when government works for ordinary people. It's the reason why I'm standing up for ordinary people across Georgia, fighting for affordable health care, the dignity of work, and why I've registered hundreds of thousands of new voters in this state. The people of Georgia would give me the honor to represent them in the U.S. Senate. I'll stand up not for Donald Trump 100%. I won't be fighting to see who represents him better, but who represent the people of Georgia.
Thank you. Doug Collins, your turn for a closing statement, please.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, everybody. It's, you know, as we come to this time and just 2 weeks out, Georgians are going to get to choose their next senator. More than likely, it's going to be a runoff. But I want the voters to actually think about this. It's about the future. It's about the people who right now are not watching this because they're still in elementary school. They're still growing. This campaign's always been about my 3 kids. Every campaign I've ever run. It's about my daughter, Jordan, and my 2 sons, Copeland and Cameron. It's about their future, because when I'm thinking about their future, I'm thinking about every grandkid, every niece, every nephew, and every community across the state of Georgia. And it's real simple for us. You can go and look at experience. You can go and look what actually has been done. cut through the rhetoric, cut through everything, and look at what actually has been happening. When you've worked for criminal justice reform, when you've pastored like I have, when you're in the military for 19 years, serving in Iraq in 2008, 2009, when you look at who has the real experience and who is the conservative in this race to actually represent all of Georgia, this trooper's kid from Gainesville humbly asks for your vote.
Thank you. Matt Lieberman, you get the next closing statement.
Thank you. Hey, look, folks, don't vote for one of these three stooges. And I mean that literally. Kelly, Don, the Reverend, each of them is already in the pocket of one or two folks in Washington and Atlanta. And what that means for us is that if they're elected, they will report first and foremost to that person, not you and me. We have a chance this year to vote for something other than an establishment Democrat or an establishment Republican. For the first time in a long time, there are more than just two flavors on the menu. For God's sake, don't just pick one of the same two flavors that you don't even like that much in the first place. I'm running for U.S. Senate as a fed-up citizen of Georgia and for the fed-up citizens of Georgia. I'm asking for your vote because this is our seat and I will be our senator. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed Tarver, you may go next. Your closing statement, please.
Thank you, Scott. This has been quite an experience. I think we've gotten a chance to see why many believe that our government in Washington is as polarized as many have ever seen, why many believe that it's broken and divided, and that people have gotten about the simple values, a simple commitment to represent Georgians and not representing political parties. My campaign for the U.S. Senate is based upon my demonstrated commitment to public service and my proven experience dating back to my time in the U.S. military, always extending all the way to my service as part of the Obama administration as the United States Attorney for South Georgia. I truly believe that this is the most consequential election of my lifetime. I will continue to support law enforcement to keep our community safe. I will continue to fight against systemic racial and religious discrimination, and I will continue to be a voice for Georgia's agriculture. I would be honored to be your senator, and I would ask that you vote for common sense, experienced leadership as Georgia's next U.S. senator. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Slowinski, your turn for a closing statement, please.
Thank you. I'd like to agree with Mr. Lieberman, but the flavor that you need is right sitting here right in front of you right now. My name is Brian Slowinski. Brian Slowinski. Brian Slowinski. Why do I say my name 3 times? I'm the third-party independent consensus candidate. I'm the one that sponsored 14 online debates that have had Republicans, Democrat, independents all involved. We come together. We have the gravitas that's necessary. I've been endorsed by the Libertarian Party. I've been endorsed by recommended by the Constitution Party, and I was just recently endorsed by Georgia Right to Life. I am the not a choice, the none of the above choice to the two-party system that is broken. If you want to protest the $1 million candidates that are there, then vote for somebody who will represent you. I'm the pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, pro-Constitution candidate in this race. If you want to scare the two-party establishment, vote Slowinski. That will scare them. And I will make sure I represent you and that we stop all this unconstitutional spending up in the United States Congress and work for the people of the United States. Again, I would appreciate your vote. My name is Brian Slowinski, and God bless you, and may God bless America.
Thank you. And Kelly Loeffler, you get the final closing statement.
Thank you. I'm Kelly Loeffler. I am a political outsider. I'm a conservative businesswoman running to defend the American dream. I voted 100% with President Trump. I've been rated the most conservative senator in the U.S. Senate, and I've been A-rated by the NRA and have a 100% rating for pro-life with the National Right to Life endorsement. But look, serving as your U.S. Senator is such an honor. It's a long way from where I started in life. I grew up on a farm, working in the fields, waitressing, was blessed to graduate from college, the first in my family. I've lived paycheck to paycheck, but I've also lived the American dream. That's what I'm in Washington fighting for every single Georgian. But look, what you've seen here is the radical agenda of the left. The Democrats want to put the government at the center of our lives. They want to tax and spend. It's the same for career politicians who have tax and spend. And career politicians politicians who've built their campaigns on lies about me. Look, I came to Washington to fight for the American dream, to stand with President Trump, and I'm so humbled to be your senator. I ask for your vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thanks to WABE's Lisa Rayam and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's Greg Bluestein for staffing our panel today. That concludes our debate. We'd like to remind voters that Election Day is Tuesday, November 3rd. Don't forget to turn in your absentee ballot if you requested one. And early voting in person is going on now. And I'm sure if you follow the news at all, you've seen the record turnout. We are in for quite a result here in November. Thanks to the candidates and the panel for participating in this debate. I'd also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club and Georgia Public Broadcasting for arranging today's debate. And for more information on the full schedule of debates, please visit atlantapressclub.org. I'm Scott Slade from WSB. Thank you for joining us for the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series. Have a great day.
Then I had a choice to make. Do I let my people run it really well,